The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. A's Baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it's a pleasure for me to say that Jerry Feitelberg is back from his lifelong cruise. How are you, Jerry?
I'm doing great, Ralph. It was the cruise of a lifetime. We had such a wonderful
I think
time.
that's a better expression than lifelong cruise. That's what I meant. It was fun, wasn't it? We've kept in touch a little bit. We've talked off the air.
Yeah.
Was it everything you expected it to be, outside of the fact that one of your friends really experienced a bad accident and was hospitalized? But was the cruise itself what you expected?
Yeah, it was. Some of the places were terrific that we went to. We went to, in South Africa, we went to several countries. We found out that Cape Town is one of the most beautiful cities in the planet. And if people ever get a chance to go there, do so. It has a temperate climate. And there's a lot to see and do in Cape Town. There's a lot to see and do in South Africa. We had a wonderful tour of the city of Durban, which is where Mahatma Gandhi got his start as an attorney in South Africa. And we learned about the trials and tribulations that he had as an attorney in a white area, and he was a person who was dark-skinned. And that was very, very interesting. And then
they call that apartheid. Am I correct?
Apartheid didn't become official until much later, but segregation was pretty much understood for many, many years in South Africa. And the South Africans all speak glowingly of Nelson Mandela, who ended apartheid. And F.W. de Klerk, who they also view as a hero, as he was a white man who stepped up and said, apartheid has to end. And it ended. So that was interesting. And we went to Richards Bay, which is northwest of Johannesburg on the coast. And we went on a tour. It took us about an hour to get there. We went to a Zulu settlement where the Zulu people live, and we had a nice show, and they showed us how they lived. And we found out that the Zulu people were considered the most fierce warriors in Africa, and they put up monumental fights against the slave traders. And the slave traders didn't want to have anything to do with them, and they did not take them to be slaves. So,
really? They resisted. In other words, these people knew what was in store for them if they did resist, and they went down, fighting.
Right. Countries like Mozambique and Kenya and Tanzania, they were raided, and we got a tour of the city of Maputo in Mozambique, and Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. They're big cities. There are people working there. Don't know how much money they're making, but there's really not much to see in those two cities. In fact, all we did in Maputo was we went to a market and we looked at stuff, and one of the people in our group bought a nice ebony cane that was carved. I think she paid $12 for it after a lengthy negotiation. And in Dar es Salaam, we also went to a market, but they were just stalls, and it was hot and humid, and a lot of the stalls had this corrugated steel for a roof, and with the heat coming down, the temperature inside, no one had air conditioning. The temperature inside probably is 120 degrees, brutally hot, and some guy trying to eke out a living is trying to sell his merchandise to whomever comes by. And of course, the ships take their busloads of people out there, but I don't know how much they buy out there. It's tough. But we also went to a couple parks, and we had a nice performance of the people in Tanzania. The place that I really liked in Tanzania was the island of Zanzibar. Zanzibar has an active port, and we took a tour. And just before we're beginning to start the tour, there's a guy coming riding a bicycle, and he has a Golden State Warrior T-shirt on, or a jersey on, with Steph Curry's number on it. He went by so fast we couldn't get a picture. But when we went into the fish market, there was a guy selling fish, and he had a Boston Red Sox T-shirt on. That one I got a picture, and I'm going to post it on Facebook in a couple of days.
Wow, and you're a Boston Red Sox fan too.
Yeah, it's the hometown.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
what was your favorite part of the trip?
Oh, there were so many favorite parts. We used tours by local in several of the cities rather than the ship tours, and we had a wonderful tour in Sri Lanka, Colombo, Sri Lanka. They're totally different than India, although there's a lot of people, and they have both Muslim and Hindus, but they look like Indian people in the country. And they have a tremendous amount of shopping stalls with fresh fruit from all over, spices from all over, clothing from all over. But at the same time, their colonial buildings, their parliament building, which was built by the British, and their railroad station was built by the British. They're also building a lot of hotels, and they're doing a lot of reclamation of the sea. They had a machine going that was pumping dirt out from the ocean or whatever they were doing, and it was just going all the time as they fill in the island to put up more hotels. And tourism has become extremely important for them. And the women were very happy. We went to several jewelry stores where they had a lot of stuff, and you could negotiate for prices. And the women came away happy, and the husbands looked sad, but that's the way it was.
Their wallets were a little emptier and a little lighter and easier to carry on the tour.
Right. But the problem in Colombo is that we needed one more day. We had a very short tour because of sailing. And then from there we went to Phuket. We got a wonderful tour of Phuket. Our guide in Phuket, we asked him about the tsunami that hit in 2004 that caused so many deaths. And he wasn't near the beach at that time. He was very, very fortunate. And he had no knowledge of it for an hour or so. And then, the word spread through the island of Phuket what happened. And we had a very nice tour of Phuket. We ended up at the seashell factory, and those pictures I took, the seashells were phenomenal. And then the last thing we went to was a cashew factory. And we learned why cashews cost so much money and how difficult they are to grow. The cashews, they grow, the fruit of the cashew tree looks like an apple. And hanging from the apple is the cashew nut. And the apple produces one fruit a year and one nut per apple. Well, that's it for the year.
Whoa.
And then they have to crack the shell to get the cashew out. They have to boil it because there's toxic substances, but they do it. And the cashews, as we found out, was originally from Central America, but they brought it to Thailand, and they now have these very expansive cashew tree farms, and they make, they harvest the cashews and put them up for sale. And we're just used to getting one type of cashew nuts. They had 10 different flavors, for all kinds of flavors. They had chocolate cashews. They had honey cashews. They had sesame cashews. They had cashews with butter. They had cashews with salt. Whatever you wanted, they had it.
All right.
And they sampled it. And we spent about $70 on cashews before we left.
Well,
so
that's a lot of money to spend on cashews, but what a delicacy.
Oh yeah, it's great. The other places we stopped, we had a tour of Penang, And Penang, again, Malaysia was under British control, British rule. The city of Georgetown, you can see the British influence, but also you have the Islamic and the Muslim influence. And you also have Chinese influence on the island. And we got a tour of the island. We went to a butterfly preserve where the butterflies are all over the place. And if they land on you, they consider that gift lucky for you. And they had other animals, reptiles, different types of reptiles that they have on the island. You have to remember that all these countries that we went to, it's hot and humid, and they have a lot of snakes. And one of the women said she'd freak out if she saw a snake. Unfortunately, the ones that she did see were behind glass, so it wasn't a problem. But Penang, there's a tremendous amount of high-rise building. The beaches, the resorts are nice, but they're providing housing for the people. And they don't have single-family homes like we do. They have all high-rises. And then we went to the city of Kuala Lumpur, which was a total surprise. Our guide we gave him 10 stars. On a rating of 1 to 5, he got a 10. He was a 61-year-old man who gave us a tour. He was originally from Penang, but moved to Kuala Lumpur. In his spare time, he's a calligrapher, and because the Chinese New Year was coming up, he made 3 posters for us, and it was the calligraphy for the Year of the Dog, one for each couple. And he took us to this wonderful site in Kuala Lumpur. I think they call them the Batu Caves. And these caves, and we get there, and there's this huge statue of a Hindu god. And they're getting ready for the Hindu New Year. And to get up to the top, you have to go up 283 stairs, which we didn't do. Not that we couldn't do it, but there was no need to do it. It was hot and humid. And I took some pictures of that. And on January 31st is the Hindu New Year. He said in that little square where we were, there'd be 2 million people coming in over the 2 or 3 day period for the Hindu New Year. And in addition, they're getting ready for the Chinese New Year, which comes around February 9th or 10th. So there's quite a mix of people on the Malay Peninsula. And we saw monkeys playing. We saw those is in Kuala Lumpur, and then we had a wonderful lunch in Chinatown. And then we went to the Twin Towers. I think they're 1,400 plus feet each. A beautiful business center in Kuala Lumpur. We went to their central market. Just a lot of commerce, a lot of things going on, a lot of beauty going on, and much more than I expect in Kuala Lumpur. And then we went to the
Jerry, you came in touch with a lot of different folks from different cultures. Which culture to you seemed the most mellow and just interesting, fun to be around? Of all of them.
I like the people in Thailand. I like the people in Zanzibar. Even though that's also Islamic, they took us out to a school, and the kids were so gracious. The kids were singing for us, and they had a great time. And then we went to Singapore. They're very helpful people in Singapore. If you look at someone...
Conversely, Jerry, were there some cultures that weren't appealing to you?
I didn't like Mombasa in Kenya. Mombasa was filthy. It was, we were over by one of the port, by the ferries. We're it's called the Old Town section, and there was a pile of rubbish. It looked like the trash hadn't been picked up for a month. And there were birds, or the crows or whatever, were feasting on whatever was in there. And I told the people in the group, if this were at nighttime, there'd be rats all over the place. And that was not an isolated incident. We saw other piles of trash all throughout the city. So Mombasa was not my favorite stop. We did have a nice lunch. on a river or an estuary, and there were some nice homes across the river, but we never got to see them. We did go out
So
to an
if
area.
you went back, could you design an itinerary to avoid the countries that didn't appeal to you?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Would you consider doing that, or do you think you've had enough?
I've had enough. But there are there are beautiful beaches in Zanzibar, and they have hotels right on the beach. And I think there were some beautiful consulates there in the city of in Zanzibar. And there's a lot of commercial activity going on, and I didn't feel unsafe. I felt very safe in Thailand. I felt very safe in Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. They have very strict rules. In Thailand, you cannot smoke in public. In Singapore, you
much
can't
like
smoke
in Alameda.
Yeah, right. You can't smoke in public. You can't chew gum. You can't drop anything. And I have a story to tell you about Alameda.
All right.
We were in South Africa, and we're in Mossel Bay, which is an interesting place. It wasn't much to do there. They had a beautiful beach there, but we were stopped there, and we have to tender in. So we're in the tender, and as people do when they're on vacation, they say, "Where are you from?" And I hear, "We're from California." People in back of us, and so are we. What part of California? Northern California. So are we. We're in Northern California. And the woman says, Alameda. And my ears go up. Alameda? We're in Alameda. I live in Alameda. Where you live? She says, we live on Bay Farm. I said, oh, so do I. So this couple was a great couple. The wife's name is Gigi and the husband is Manny. They're both widowed. And Gigi had been married for 34 years, and Manny had been married for 50 years. Manny had been living in Alameda for the last 10, and they had both lost their spouses. And they got married about 4 months ago, and this was the beginning of a 6-month honeymoon for them. And they were on our trivia team, and we had so much fun. And Gigi could have been the cruise director. She mingled and chatted with everybody, and she was a lot of fun. They're going to be in Bangkok for the next 2 months, and then they're going to be back in Alameda in May. We're going to have a reunion party when they come home. So we're looking forward to it. And she posts on Facebook every day.
Very nice. So it is overall, you had fun. The one, as I say, the one bad thing was your friend getting into an accident and experiencing some negative health care. You want to quickly tell us about that and tell people maybe if they could prepare to avoid that, or you can't avoid an accident, but you have to know where you are and what kind of care you're going to receive. Brief with this, we'll talk a little A's ball.
Yeah, make sure when people go on cruises or take any vacations outside the United States, especially if you're over 65, or even if you're a working person, your health insurance usually doesn't cover you. Medicare will not cover you outside the United States. So you have to buy trip insurance. And trip insurance is essential. Usually costs about 6% of the trip. So if your trip costs $6,000, it's going to cost you $360, something like that, for the insurance, and it's money well spent. So you get maybe $50,000 worth of medical and $1 million worth of whatever else that you need. And this fella had a serious accident as he slipped down some steps, or concrete rock steps in the Seychelles, and he broke 7 ribs, and 3 of the ribs had double fractures. And he's very fortunate to be alive. So he went to different hospitals, and he went to a hospital in the Maldives, which was not up to U.S. standards, and he was there for 8 days until they could get him out. He used medevac, and they had a private jet taken from the Maldives to Singapore, which is about a 2,500-mile trip. But he had a doctor and nurse on board, and that was all covered by the insurance. And so it's absolutely necessary to get it. And fortunately, he's going to make it. He's going to be home around the time of the Super Bowl, which we'll get a chance to watch. And for me, as I said, I would advise it. For me, I'm glad to go home because I only found one guy on the ship that would talk baseball, and I was detoxed by 40 days. It was a wilderness. Wilderness.
You're dying to do so. So what do you hear? What do you say about the 2018 Oakland A's?
Well, so far, it's they made a trade with the Cardinals to get that outfielder whose mother's sick, Steve Biscotti, who's going to play center field for them, left field. They got Bill Powell in center and probably Matt Joyce in right. You got the two masks, Chapman and Olson, who had played very, very well in the second half of the year. They're going to have a Marcus Semien and hopefully a healthy Jed Lowry. They're a little weak in the catching department, and I think that they need an upgrade over Bruce Maxwell. I don't think he showed me enough last year to make it worthwhile. They got a lot of ifs on the pitching staff, especially the starting rotation. They got Kendall Graveman. They got Triggs, who was hurt. They got three. I can't think of the other players right now because I haven't been thinking about baseball. But they got 5 starters, and they're all iffy. If they can come through, if they had Cotton, who was in and out, wasn't consistent.
He had much more potential than he showed ability last year. They were really high on him. He had a great Arizona Fall League the year before this, and he was a disappointment. What was a disappointment from a player personnel standpoint to me last year was practically giving Sonny Gray away.
Oh yeah,
he was the anchor.
The two guys that they got a pitcher and a center fielder, and the center fielder is going to compete for a job. He might beat out Boo Powell. That remains to be seen. And you're right, they gave away Gray for nothing, and they had control over Gray for another 2 years. So, and they gave him to the Yankees. It was a bad deal in my mind. They would have been better off keeping him. But you know what Billy Bean does. He gets rid of them before they cost money. So they don't have a very heavy payroll again this year. But
Jerry, if you know me in the off season with the Mets and with the A's, I'm almost a Pollyanna. So I'm going to look for something that I see that's positive. I think that this kid Barreto is going to beat out Jed Lowry, and he will dump some payroll and or pick up some pitching, with Jed Lowry.
Well, Jed can rake, but no one wants him. That's the problem. They could have traded him last year and gotten something for him, but no one picked him up. And he had 49 doubles and a lot of home runs, and he was on base all the time, terrific on base percentage. So he doesn't have the range that a Barreto would do, and sometimes it takes a year or two for a young ball player for it to click in. And if it clicks in, Jed would be gone. But right now, I think Jed's going to be the guy at second base to start the season.
Okay. Well, I hope so. He's a solid guy, but I look for them to sell short all the time, and
Oh yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Another pitch.
They also have a kid catcher coming up. I think his name is Murphy, if I'm not mistaken, who's in the top 10 catchers in terms of prospect catchers. And they have a couple of shortstops that are in the top 10. And anytime you have catchers and shortstops in the farm system that are ranking from that standpoint, that's a good sign, because a shortstop, even if he ends up not playing another position, he's probably the best athlete on the field. And enough can't be said about the importance of having good catching. So, and don't the A's have a kid, Maxwell, I think his name is, who did that protest?
I don't care so much about the protest. His performance left me a little cold. He did not hit well, and I don't know how he handled the pitchers. You know, sometimes you get a guy that can handle pitchers. I remember Ron Hassey with the A's. I think he used to be Bob Welch's exclusive catcher. And sometimes you get a guy like that who can handle pitching. It makes a huge difference. He knows how to call the game, how to work with the pitchers and get the most out of the pitchers. I don't know if Maxwell can do that.
If he can do that, it doesn't matter where he hits, how much he hits.
Right.
In the American League especially, because with the DH, lack of hitting generally isn't the problem. And staying tight up the middle is very, very important. If you get good double play combination, good center fielder, and a good catcher, you stand a much better chance of succeeding.
Oh, absolutely.
So, now, tell me about Pinder. Is he good defensively, or can he play all three infield positions? He seems to be a guy with a good stick and not a home to be found.
Right. He's probably not as good defensively as Olsen or Chapman. Probably better than the Jet Lowry. The problem that the A's had last year, if you recall, is that they were giving away too many games because of poor fielding. And you don't want to beat yourself. You don't want to give guys 4 outs an inning. You want to be good in the field. I remember when Tony La Russa and the A's were winning those 3 world champions, they had a terrific fielding team with Tony Phillips, with Mark McGuire, with Walt Weiss, and then Burdick and Carney Lansford, and the catching was Steinbach, and the outfield. Those guys could field, and they didn't give away runs. When you start giving away runs, you're going to lose ball games. Pitchers don't like to have 4 or 5 outs in an inning, and it really.
Hey Jerry, speaking of defensive outfielders, the A's had an outfield of 3 guys that I consider to be as good as any threesome I'm 71. I've been following this stuff very carefully for a long time. They had Murphy, Armas, and Ricky Henderson in one outfield. And those guys, it was 3 center fielders in essence. Ricky was in the absolute prime of his career speed-wise. It was pretty cool watching those guys.
Yeah, they didn't let the ball get by them, and if they know where to throw the ball. You know, you got to throw it to the right base. They knew how to anticipate, and they had to know what the pitcher was throwing, and they had to know.
And Armas had a gun in right field.
Oh, Tony, and he could hit. He used it.
Yes,
he had a lot of power in his bat too. Good ball player. Of course, he ended up with the Red Sox.
He had a quick fall off. I don't remember why or what the circumstances were.
Don't remember either. And and Murphy was good. They all were. They all were good fielders.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that was
Good
in the
memories,
early '80s.
Jerry.
In the early '80s, they were good. They were an up and coming team then. They had, if you recall, they had Billy Martin was their manager, and Billy got himself thrown out of Oakland. And then they had Steve Boris, the old Tiger. I think he was a third baseman with the Tigers, and he was the manager, but he didn't have any good luck with the club, and they replaced him with Jackie Moore, and Moore wasn't doing anything. And then when Tony La Russa got fired in Chicago, they had the good sense to hire him right away, and that changed the.
I think was that Bill Veeck that fired him in Chicago.
No, I don't think so. I think it was Reinsdorf.
Oh, okay.
I think that was
you're right.
Yeah.
May I ask why? Do you have any idea why he was fired in Chicago? Because talk about a bad move. And
I have no idea. I have no idea. In retrospect, they probably thought they were doing the right thing, and then La Russa went on to become a Hall of Fame manager. So
right. And you know, one of his La Russa's biggest tools, literally and figuratively, you might say, was Dave Duncan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Who was a terrific pitching coach, if not anyone but Dave Duncan. He was who he is.
You know, he was a catcher who became a pitching coach.
Yes.
Usually it doesn't work that way. Usually you have an ex-pitcher, but you had a catcher who knew all the mechanics of pitching, which I find quite interesting. And he was a good pitching coach.
Yes, and he went with Tony wherever Tony went.
Oh yeah, he's got a few rings.
Yep.
He's got a few. I think he got a couple with the Cardinals, and he got one with the A's, and wherever else Tony was. I think Tony won 3 World Series. And
as an A's apologist over the years, I could never really truly root for them for a number of reasons, but I am now becoming more of an A's fan. I hate to use that word, but I would say the biggest disappointment I had was 1990 when they played Cincinnati in the World Series. And they were just coming off sweeping the Giants, which didn't thrill me at the time because I was an old New York Giant fan.
Sure.
Giants out here disappointed me 8 times with their wanting to move and their all but gone attitude. So when in 1990, I was really rooting for the A's to beat Cincinnati. And, boy, they got slunged.
Did they ever? 4th straight
year.
Close. But the Reds had the nasty boys in those days. That shut them down in the late innings. Was it Steve Charlton and Dibble?
Yeah. Charlton and another guy who's a commentator, Rod Dibble.
Ron Dibble. He threw 100 miles an hour.
Yeah. And in those days, throwing 100 miles an hour wasn't all that usual. There weren't that many players, for whatever reason, be it PEDs or human growth hormones or whatever. And I still believe that 80% of the league is using some sort of substance that keeps things balanced. The hitters use, the pitchers use. It makes it impossible for us to compare great ball players of the past to great ball players of the present, because who knows? But if you compare the players to each other, generation or decade by decade against each other, we still have that. Point being, Rob Dibble presumably this was before the PED epidemic, and he was still throwing 100 miles an hour. Very few did.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare in those days. And
right.
Now, of course, you get guys that are up there do it every day, and who knows how they do it. But if you look at the power numbers of today versus the PED era, Bonds hit 73, McGuire hit 70. If a guy hits 40, 45 home runs, he's a big, powerful guy. Those are the numbers that normal people, even big stars of today, put up. They're having a great year if they have 45. And last year we had, how many guys? We had Aaron Judge with 52 and Stanton had 59. They had amazing.
Well, it's not those guys you look at. You look at it's the utility infielder, a guy like Pender. How many home runs that he hit, and he doesn't play every day, for instance.
Well, all the guys are swinging for the fences now. They blew that uppercut swing, because of the shift that they have. They don't want to put the ball on the ground. You remember going back to the days of Walt Herniak and Charlie Lau. They told the guys to hit down on the ball, make contact with it, and hit it up the middle, it will go through. Now with the shift, it doesn't go through, and their averages drop. And so they want to get paid. So if their OPS, their on-base plus slugging, declines, they're not going to make the big money. And they're not going to, and the sabermetric guys are going to say they have less value. So
well, that's the one statistic both for pitchers, batters against, and for hitters to judge their effectiveness that I think is the best in baseball. It I don't know how they compile WAR. I've never been able to understand that. And a few others that are very confusing, a few others still, especially on defense, which don't really give you that much of a clue as to who is the best defensive player at their position. Never been able to come up with anything for defense.
Yeah, I think that WHIP is a good indication.
WHIP is a great one.
Walks plus hits divided by innings pitched. The lower the WHIP, the better the pitcher. And the other thing is the batting average of balls in play. What are you hitting when you put the ball in play? So those are indicators of what the hitter can do. But, they have something called UZR, and, who knows what that is. And they try to measure how good a player is defensively. We used to go by fielding percentage. The guy has a 960 fielding average. He's not fielding very well. But that doesn't take into account how much range he's covering and how difficult, how deep he's playing, that type of thing. So that's hard to assess. If a guy has a 991 fielding percentage and he plays maybe 60% of the games and doesn't have that many chances to handle, it's hard to assess how effective he is. But those are for the new guys to figure out.
All right, Jerry, this has been a good episode. I'm sorry Nancy wasn't here to join us, but I'm sure she will be back next week. Recuperate from your trip a little bit. You're going to get some rest this week, I hope.
Oh, yeah. I want to thank Ken Korak and Michael Duca for pinch hitting, two of the best guys around. Especially with Korak, he is good. That guy.
Who is that?
Ken Korak's one of the best radio announcers that nobody knows.
Oh, absolutely. He's got the pipes, and I'll tell you something about Ken Korak. As good an announcer as he is, he's a better human being.
He's a terrific guy. I like him a lot.
Terrific guy.
Way back in the 90s when he started, when Lon Simmons retired, he came on board with Bill King. I would listen to Bill King and Ken Korak, and at that time, I was with the club. I was on the medical staff of the club at the time. And they called over to the store for something. Ken called over, and I had a chance to talk to him. I told him something, and it's still true to this day. When I listen to Bill King and Ken Cork, and now with Vince Cotroneo and Ken Korak, they make it sound like it's the first time they've ever seen it and the first time that they ever broadcast it. Their stuff does not sound stale. They do not repeat themselves very often, which is really nice for a listener.
Well, you're understating it, because every time I hear Ken, I think of Lon. I really do.
Lon, yeah.
They just had a rhythm and a way of making one feel like they're your friend. And that's all in it's like you're talking ball with them. You find yourself talking back to the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Baseball's great on the radio. No question about it.
The reason it's great is because you use your imagination to visualize the play. And if these guys describe it like Ken and Vince and Bill King did and Lon Simmons did, and of course the master, Vince Scully, it's your brain does all the work for you. You visualize.
They give you on radio what a television producer can't give you, because there aren't enough cameras that can compensate for the human eye and the instinct of a good radio reporter.
Sure.
So I'm just happy to be able to listen to a game and not have to really be tied to the television.
I know it's exciting to watch. If you're watching Dallas Braden pitch his perfect game, or going way back to '65 when Sandy Koufax pitched his perfect game, if you could when they're describing it on radio, it is so much. It's exciting to watch it on TV, but it's so much more exciting to listen to it on radio. You can feel the tension building up. What is the athlete thinking about? What's going through his mind? What's he trying to do to get to ice it down? Is there ice water in his veins, or does he have emotions? You don't know. And the radio announcer.
Well, you mentioned Sandy's perfect game, and I hearken back, and it's on YouTube. You can go to get it. Anybody can just tune in. It's the last inning or so of Sandy's perfect game, broadcast by Vince Scully. And every time I listen to it, it's a debate in my own head. Which is a better performance? Scully's announcing of the game, or Koufax's? And remember, he struck out like the last 3 guys in a row, or the last 5 guys in a row. It was unbelievable. And
yeah, it is.
The way Vince Scully called it, I still get chills listening. And I'm a Giant fan. But whoa, that was something else.
Yeah, well, anyway, we did not talk about the Giants, and I'm sure you did the podcast with Michael Duca. The Giants made three moves that really helped the club. The 3: Evan Longoria, Austin Jackson, and I forgot the third guy. It was a pretty big.
Third guy was McCutchen that they got
in Pittsburgh.
And I liked what they did when they got McCutchen. They didn't just simply put him in center and figure, well, Parker or somebody will be fine in left. They upgraded. They put him in right. They put Pence in left, and then went out and got Austin Jackson.
Yeah.
So they really upgraded it. And not only that, again, Longoria, and they didn't trade Panic, which is really good. Yeah. And you just got to hope with the Giants that they get Bumgarner back in physical shape. And
oh, yeah. And they got some pop in their lineup. And so Posey should have a better year.
Absolutely. And Belt should have a better year, too, you would think.
Yeah. And maybe Belt, too. So
yeah.
hopefully, if they're pitching rebounds, they got 3 guys that can pitch, maybe 4 guys would block. But they got, Samaja, who's only been so-so for most of his career. And they got Bumgarner and whoever else. I can't think of the other guy, but my brain has been on overload. I can't think of all the guys that have been reading the papers every day.
I know. It'll take you a week or so, and you'll be up to snuff, Jerry. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're healthy, and it's really nice to hear your voice on the air.
It's good to be back. Good to be back. I enjoyed it immensely.
All right.
Ralph. It's
been
a pleasure again.
Pardon me?
It's been a pleasure again.
Oh, it always is, Jerry. And next week it'll be. I want to remind the folks out there that if you like our offerings, and even if you don't, box up some lightly used children's books and take them down to the Head Start program wherever you live. Kids need to read. They need to establish a passion. They need to become school ready, and they need to take their noses out of the devices and the games a little bit and get what we got when we were kids. Get to use your imagination a little bit. So if you'll do that, it might help society down the line, and wouldn't that be great? Because we seem to be going downhill in the hand bucket. Am I right? Things have never been, in all the years we've lived, we're both septuagenarians, or we're in our 70s. Has it ever been this, not that the good old days were always the good old days, but this is getting crazy already.
Yeah, you're right. The imaginations, you get your imagination through reading and through listening to radio programs. The baseball, you visualize how the game's being played, and the same thing in reading. If I read Treasure Island, I view Long John Silver slightly different than you would view Long John Silver. And so everyone has a different visualization. Allen, who most of the millennials have never heard of. And when Fred Allen had his radio program, and television came along, he hated television. He said this: radio is theater of the mind. Television is theater of the mindless. And that's the big difference.
Whoa. That's a great expression.
Yeah.
Yeah, we forget Fred Allen was very, very big in radio. In the George Burns and Gracie Allen era, when shows like The Lone Ranger were on the radio, and it would be sound effects. When I was a kid, I'd go to bed with that, with the radio under the pillow, and I'd listen to the stories of, that would allow your imagination to take over. The good old days. Here's to the good old days. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jerry Feitelberg. Welcome back. And we'll catch you next week. Same time, same bat station. Adios, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.